in many ways been linked to this YouTube and, in your case, Jared, Twitter purge. You are at Jared Beck, and you're there, but you're not allowed to tweet, huh?
Not allowed to tweet. As of today, I wasn't even allowed to read other people's tweets. I've been banned for 7 days, starting last week. Supposedly the ban ends tomorrow, and the basis for the ban is that apparently I was engaged in abusive and harassing conduct in the wake of the Parkland shooting, because I was expressing outrage about the shooting, and that people want to turn it into a narrative about gun control, when in fact there are serious questions about the security of our schools in this country. I think what's going on is that, for whatever reason, we're seeing these social media companies flexing their muscle right now, and it's not so much about the actual censorship of viewpoints as it is about these companies demonstrating their power to the people that use them, and basically using these tactics to try to get people in line and not ask questions and not undertake examinations that are going to lead to places that the ruling establishment of this country wants us to, doesn't want us to go. Take the Las Vegas massacre, which was a non-school massacre, but there are significant questions being asked about not only the security and the law enforcement response, but what exactly happened that day at that school. We have conflicting eyewitness testimony out there. We have people who have said in TV interviews that they either sensed that there were multiple shooters there, or they saw a shooter that was dressed in police tactical gear. Just very and any lawyer worth his or her salt, when they're faced with conflicting evidence, you don't run to conclusions and make conclusions about what happened.
In particular, the case of YouTube, I find that particularly bad because Google, much more so than Twitter, has utilized what I've been calling the heroin dealer business model, where they've given you all this valuable stuff for free to the point where you've come to rely on it. If you've got a channel on YouTube that you've got monetized, you're relying on that money for your business. Part of the reason why I have never monetized this channel on YouTube. And I've heard from people who have been locked out of their Gmail accounts as a result of being banned from YouTube. It seems like a real gross overreach of power, violations of Federal Trade Commission stuff, FCC stuff. What can you say about that?
Right. Well, you have to make a distinction between laws that are on the books and how power actually operates in this country. I mean, just to use an analogy, sure, I mean, the Soviet Union had all kinds of laws on the books, but at the end of the day, in the Soviet Union, it was the Communist Party that ran the show, and there was no dissent allowed. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything when you're talking about the actual power structure.
It doesn't matter what it says on the books. You have to read between the lines and understand how things are really run. So we supposedly have free speech in this country, which is fairly unfettered with some carve-out exceptions. But I see this on Twitter. People say, well, you have free speech. You just have to suffer the consequences of that, such as getting fired, such as public humiliation for your opinions, isolate. Yeah. That's not free speech.
Is it overreach for these companies? Of course not, because these companies, the tentacles of deep state run so deep into companies such as Google, Facebook, Twitter, and they run in such a way that the people who actually run those companies or nominally run them may not even be aware of the role they're playing in furthering the deep state agenda. And that's just the way things go in this country. And, I think for a long time, the deep state has been colonizing these powerful social media platforms because they understand that control of these platforms is necessary in order to maintain control over ideology in this country. We may not be feeling the effects of suppression of expression in the same way that people felt in other countries and other places in time. But we live in a much different society where Twitter, Facebook, I mean, these are the public sphere for expression, our society of the exercise of free expression. The real value is actually reaching a lot of people with your opinions and your questions and what have you. And the only viable way for people to do that in this day and age on a large scale is through social media. Yeah. And so we are feeling this fascist suppression in a way that I think is appropriate for the kind of society we live in today.
And maybe the plan all along has been for these social media platforms, maybe it was just they realized these are going to take over and we'll control it by making it free.
Censorship is not just about suppressing opinions or making sure that certain types of opinions, certain types of questions, of information don't reach a large audience. It's also about exercising psychological control over your citizens. When you prevent them from expressing their opinions, which in many cases are going to be, filled with rage and anger. I mean, kids got blown away out of school, large part because the people who were supposed to be responsible for their security weren't doing their job, and also because I just don't think public schools are nearly adequately secured as they need to be, given what our society's become. But if you prevent people from expressing outrage in the wake of that, you're exercising a kind of psychological control over them that, it's like zapping them, and you make them, less, effective. And it's also about that. So there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of reasons why the state would want to be, through these companies engaged in strategies like that. It's working at multiple levels.